Hello everyone, in this Blender video tutorial we will be modeling a pumpkin. Let's begin by adding a single vertex that we will extrude a couple of times to create a basic pumpkin shape. Make sure vertices at the top and bottom have a y coordinate of 0. We can get the camera out of view. Now let's add a screw modifier with 100 steps. Select merge vertices and flip. We're gonna add a subdivision surface modifier with 2 subdivisions. Shape looks pretty good, I think. Maybe even scale it up a bit along the z-axis. Now let's apply the screw modifier. I'll select one vertical edge on the pumpkin. I'm gonna select edge ring. And with checker deselect, we're gonna select every 5th edge. And edge loops. We're gonna create 20 creases along that pumpkin. So let's deselect the vertices at the top and bottom of the pumpkin. And with proportional editing enabled, a sharp fall off. Begin by applying rotation and scale. I'm gonna scale down all those vertices. Now let's add a stalk to that pumpkin. So select some vertices at the top, scale them down to 0 along the z-axis, and move them up along the z-axis, extrude them, scale them down a bit, extrude again, scale down, move them along the y-axis and rotate them. And apply rotation and scale again, and I'm gonna bevel the last face. Alright then, we can try deleting it. And recreate it. Sometimes the Blender behaves oddly. Oh, now we got the stalk done. By rotation and scale again. Now we're gonna create some sort of star shape at the base of the stalk. So we can set subdivisions to 0 so we can see better what we're doing. Let's add a loop here. Select total of 10 vertices. Proportional editing enabled. We're gonna scale them up. Bring them down a bit. So let's see if that star shape is good. So we're gonna create 2 materials already that we will rework later. Apply a brown matte material to the stalk. So let's scale down that pumpkin. It's way too big. Make a few adjustments. These vertices should be moved up. Make it smoother look. I can reduce this to 1 subdivision, and we're gonna apply it. Create another subsurface modifier with 1 subdivision. We're gonna select the same vertices we used to create the star. I'm gonna sharpen them a bit. Maybe bring them down a bit along the z-axis. All right. Now let's take a look at those faces. As you can see, most of them are shaped like rectangles. We're gonna prefer squares, so select 1 vertical edge, select edge rings and edge loops. And we're gonna subdivide them twice. Smoothness at maximum. Now let's add a displacement modifier. We're gonna be using a cloud texture. At a depth of 24 and a size of 0.45. We're gonna be using global coordinates and set the strength to 0.07. Actually, maybe we can increase this up a bit. Five rotation and scale, yeah, that's too much. So back to 0.07, all right. Now, we can set this to 0 for now. We're gonna be doing some UV mapping. So let's select one edge loop at the top of the stalk. Mark seam. One loop at the bottom of the stalk. Mark seam. And one vertical loop here. Deselect those edges. Don't need them as seams. And mark seam. Now we're gonna work on some materials. We already created two, so let's begin with the orange material. Diffuse color will be red 0.8, green 0.163, and blue 0.023. With an intensity of 0.5. Specular intensity will be 0.25. We're gonna check ramp. We're gonna move this color stop to 0.5. Set alpha to 1, red to 1, green 0.681, blue 0.421. Oh my. This is gonna be green 0.567 and blue 0.161. Yeah, that's more like it. Now check mirror. Reflectivity to 0.1, Fresnel to 1, color red 1, green 0.681, blue 0.421. So light shade of yellow. Now let's add a first texture. It's gonna be a cloud texture with a depth of 2. It's gonna be a global texture with cube projection. Set the color to black at 0.7. Label normal at 0.3. Pick best quality and a view space. Now the second texture will be a distorted noise texture with a brightness of 0.5 and a size of 0.03. It's gonna be a global texture with cube projection. Uncheck color and set the normal to 0.1 with best quality in the view space. Now let's work on the stock material. Let's set the diffuse intensity to 0.32. Specular intensity is 0.05. Hardness 20. Now let's add a texture. It's gonna be an image texture. So as usual, I'll be placing a link into the video description so you guys can obtain that texture that I will be using. We're going to be using a bark texture, this one. Let's set red to 1.2 and green to 1.2. So this one is gonna be a UV texture, so let's unwrap the stalk. Select the vertex at the middle, at the top of the stalk, and by increasing the selection, we're gonna end up with all of the vertices of the stalk selected. We're gonna go in UV editing, add the bark texture. We're gonna unwrap this. And don't forget to apply if you haven't done so already. If you've already done that. Now mapping for repetitions on the X and Y axis, and we're gonna enable mirror on the X axis. It's gonna be a UV texture. So best quality, view space, and normal at 0.15. The second texture will be a cloud texture with a depth of 24. It's gonna be global texture with a cube projection, and the color will be black. Now let's add some lamps to this scene. I'm gonna be using 2 lamps, a sunlight, and a hemilight. I'm gonna lower the energy of the hemilight to 0.1. And we're gonna be rotating those lights so they point at the pumpkin. Now let's add a plane behind the pumpkin, rotate it 90 degrees along the y-axis. We're gonna scale it up so it covers all of the camera view. Now let's grab the side and bottom edges. And we're gonna extrude them along x-axis. Let's give a material to this box. The purpose of the box is to create reflections into the pumpkin. So let's set the specular intensity to 0. Let's take a look at the render. And that's pretty much what you should be obtaining. Let me just check something real quick. Oh, it's all right. Well, this is about what you guys should be getting. It's a nice pumpkin. So this concludes our tutorial on how to make a pumpkin. In my following tutorial, we will be turning this pumpkin into a jack-o'-lantern, so stay tuned if you want to learn how to do that. If you're interested in watching other 3D modeling tutorials with Blender, please visit my YouTube channel. And until then, happy modeling, everyone.